I came here not to please anyone. I'm here to speak the truth, whether you like it or not. It's your own baby to feed, Malta Bella. I'm not in the business of going around to please people. I only tell the truth. Now, I represent a non-racial organization, but we do not fight for white people. Why? Why should we fight for them? What do you want? What do they want? When you say you are fighting for all in South Africa, black and white, what do white people want? Except to want to remain in a position of privilege. That's what they want. They want to remain in a position of privilege, and we are rejecting that. There is no white person who's going to remain in a position of privilege. We must all be equal. And in bringing the equality, we have to take deliberate decisions to empower the less privileged to be at the same level with those who are privileged.
There is one risk that above all else threatens the future of both my family and yours. And that is the increasingly realistic prospect of an alliance between the ANC and the EFF taking power next year. Given the fact that the ANC now officially co-governs with the EFF in parts of Gauteng, we need to start taking the threat of these parties ganging up to destroy our country in 2024 very, very seriously. And I want to be unequivocal about the DA's view on this. The day that an ANC-EFF government takes over, it will be doomsday for South Africa. And let me tell you, EFF doomsday will make the collapse of Zimbabwe look like a dress rehearsal. And it will leave all South Africans, black, colored, white and Indian, completely destitute and abandoned. And that is why, during the remaining months before next year's election, the DA will also make it our #1 priority and do absolutely everything in our power to prevent an ANC-EFF doomsday coalition from taking power. Over the past 30 years, the ANC has proven itself to be the opponent of progress in our country. But make no mistake, the EFF is its enemy. The EFF Doomsday Coalition will expropriate property without compensation and abolish private property rights. The EFF Doomsday Coalition will nationalize and destroy foreign banks, investments, mines and other investments in the country. The EFF Doomsday Coalition will plunge this country into ethnic and racial conflict, the likes of which has never been witnessed before. And the cold, hard truth is that the Doomsday Coalition between the ANC and the EFF has already taken over Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni with the help of its little proxies. Next year, it will be knocking on the doors of the union buildings, right next door from us in Pretoria. This fact should send a shiver down the spines of every patriot and every freedom-loving person in this country. But fortunately, there is one and only one insurance policy against the ANC-EFF Doomsday Coalition, and that is to vote for the Democratic Alliance. Because the DA is the only party that's big enough and strong enough to stop Julius Malema. The DA is the only party with the size, the resources, and the track record to oppose and defeat the Doomsday Coalition. And for proof, look no further than the action that we took against the chaos that the EFF threatened to unleash during their so-called national shutdown. It was the DA that took decisive legal steps and mobilized our thousands of branches all across this country to stop the EFF dead in their tracks. And today, I publicly declare Julius Malema's EFF to be political enemy #1 of the Democratic Alliance. And I commit the DA to fight back against the EFF at every turn.
Hello everybody, welcome once again to AfriPost. I believe wherever you're watching us from, you're doing great. Let me take this opportunity to wish each and every one of you a happy holidays. Enjoy your New Year celebrations and let's meet in 2024. Now in today's video, I want us to talk about South African politics with the aspect of the rivalry between the EFF party led by Julius Malema and the DA led by John Steenhuisen. One thing that happens here is that these parties are all in the opposition, but the official opposition party is the DA party. I want us to look at this video where John Steenhuisen was speaking of the ills that Malema has confirmed, the ills of Malema in South Africa. I want you to watch this video, then let's react later.
My fellow South Africans, in the winter of 1993, our country was on the verge of anarchy and civil war. Following the assassination of Chris Hani, many South Africans feared that we were about to descend into ethnic and racial violence that would plunge all of us into permanent darkness. And yet, with the world predicting the end of South Africa, we collectively pulled back from the edge of the abyss. Just a year later, we went on to hold our first democratic elections. It was one of the proudest moments in all of our history. But this weekend, we saw the return of a demon that we thought that we had buried in 1994. Standing on a stage in front of thousands of people in Soweto, Julius Malema resurrected the demon of hatred, division, and ethnic violence in South Africa. This is a man who is determined to ignite the civil war we averted in 1994. From that stage in Soweto, Malema told thousands of his followers that they must, and I quote, shoot to kill, unquote. He instructed them further to, and I quote, kill the boer, kill the farmer, unquote. And then he mimicked the chilling sound of gunfire to members of his political cult who answered with thunderous approval. Julius Malema told us exactly who he is, and it's time that we believe him. For far too long, people in government, the media, civil society, and constitutional institutions have refused to acknowledge Malema for the bloodthirsty tyrant and demagogue that he really is. They've brushed off the threat he is to our constitutional democracy. These people help to normalize Malema's hatred and racism. But a political leader who incites mass murder is not normal. A member of parliament who calls for the killing of an entire section of society is not normal. And cowardly politicians who turn a blind eye to the incitement of civil war is not normal. Let me be clear, the DA will not look away. We will confront Julius Malema's fascism head on. Now, many of you will recall that during the speech I delivered at the DA's Congress in April, I identified the EFF as South Africa's political enemy number one. And I pledged to you that the DA would do everything in our power to prevent Malema from gaining power through a doomsday coalition between the ANC, the PA, and the EFF. I did so for a very good reason. As I said at the time, and I quote, EFF doomsday will make the collapse of Zimbabwe look like a dress rehearsal and will leave all South Africans destitute, black, colored, white, and Indian. EFF doomsday will plunge this country into ethnic and racial conflict, the likes of which it has never witnessed before. Unquote. With his incitement to commit mass murder on Saturday, Malema has confirmed the urgency and timing of that warning. he is intent on igniting the civil war that so many South Africans worked and sacrificed to avert in 1994. But the DA will not let him succeed. That is why I can today announce that we are filing charges against both Julius Malema and the ANC government at the United Nations Human Rights Council. The first element of our United Nations case will focus on Malema's repeated incitement of ethnic violence. The second element will charge the ANC national government before the United Nations over its years-long failure to take action against their one-time protege, even as brutal farm murders continue to escalate in the wake of Malema's demagoguery. The charge will be laid in terms of Malema's violation of at least 3 key UN charters. The first is the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. Article 3 of the Convention makes it a punishable offence to direct and publicly incite people to commit mass murder on the basis of their identity. The second is a declaration on the rights of persons belonging to national or ethnic, religious and linguistic minorities. This declaration compels the South African government to ensure that persons belonging to minority groups may exercise their rights, including, in this case, the right to life and to practice the profession of farming without any discrimination. The third is Article 27 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. The DA recently forced the South African government to live up to its international responsibility to comply with warrants issued by the International Criminal Court. We will now do the same to force it to act against Malema. In addition to turning to the international community, we will also file a complaint with Parliament's Ethics Committee against Malema in his capacity as a Member of Parliament. We are further obtaining legal advice on approaching the Public Protector as well as the courts. But it is also important that we are honest about one thing. For more than a decade, the South African state has utterly failed to use appropriate internal remedies to stop Malema. Time after time, institution after institution has turned a blind eye to his incitement. We saw this again just last week. Instead of dealing with Malema, senior law enforcement officials drank expensive champagne at his table along with him at a fundraiser, which included other nefarious characters. This is exactly why the time has come to turn to the global community. Ek wil graag ook direk praat met ons boere. Alhoewel Julius Malema se geweld ons hele land in swaar kry sal dompel, koeste hy 'n besondere haat vir ons boere. Ek wil u daarom aanmoedig om Malema ernstig op te neem en binne die raamwerk van die wet gepaste stappe te neem om u plaas, u familie en plaaswerkers te beskerm. Waar u enige vrae het of hulp benodig, kontak asseblief u plaaslike DA verteenwoordiger en ons sal help. In teenstelling met Malema se haat, koeste die DA respek en bewondering vir die brawe boere wat ons almal voed. Daarom sal ons alles in ons vermoë doen om vir Malema te stop. My fellow citizens, the time has come to stop Malema. Even as the DA takes bold new action to prevent anarchy, we need your help. While Malema's singular goal is to divide South Africa, The DA is hard at work with other partners to bring people together through the Moonshot Pact. While it is the responsibility of political leaders to lead the way towards unity and a new government, we cannot succeed without the support of South African voters. That is why I'm asking that you go to check.da.org.za to ensure that you and your family are registered to vote so that we can rescue South Africa. Uniting behind the DA at this critical time is the only way to ensure that the pact has a stability and governance experience it needs to succeed. Voting DA is also the single biggest way to build a big, strong, and united political force that can stop Malema in his tracks. The events of this past weekend have revealed a painful truth that we must now confront head on. The truth is that the demon of the 1990s, which very nearly plunged this country into violence from which it would never have recovered, is not dead and buried. Julius Malema has resurrected it in time for the election. The hopeful news is that history shows that when South Africans unite for peace, we can defeat this demon. But just like in the 90s, it's going to take commitment, it's going to take leadership, and it's going to take hard work. That is why I'm calling today on every political and civil society leader to break the silence and publicly denounce the comments made by Malema. I specifically challenge President Cyril Ramaphosa to break his silence and publicly condemn Malema. To the media, I ask that you put pressure on President Ramaphosa to, for once, come out of hiding and do the right thing. If President Ramaphosa fails to denounce Malema and the comments he's made about farmers and parts of our society, it can only mean that he is too cowardly to honor the oath of office he took to uphold the Constitution and defend all the people of South Africa. My fellow South Africans, what we need in this country is not hatred and political cowardice. What we need is not demagogues who resurrect the demons we sought to bury in 1994. What we need is not destruction that only knows how to break down. What we need is to build this country. What we need is unity and cooperation. What we need is to stop shouting at each other and start listening to each other. What we need is love and compassion so that we can unclench our fists, lay down the weapons, and take hands to build a country that we can all be proud of. Thank you.
Now, watching that video really tells you the level of rivalry that DA has with EFF. And the question is that as elections are approaching in 2024, what really will happen? Because for me, if you look at the kind of support that Julius Malema and his EFF party has pulled from people, they are really building a serious momentum. And that is why you realize that John Steenhuisen could say that EFF is its enemy number one. That is because they have realized that the manner in which EFF is rising is really unbeatable. There are many people who are saying that Julius Malema does not really have much support. But I can tell you, every politician, no matter who you speak to, they have their supporters, and their supporters react differently. My only question here is, these allegations that John Steenhuisen has pushed towards Malema, will they inform the voters' perception when they're going to decide to vote in the next elections? Because, you know, in politics, your opponent can use any means possible to ensure that they beat you out of the game. And that is something that I believe John Steenhuisen is kind of employing in this case. We know that some of the cases that he's talking about, that they are going to go to the UN and everything, some of them may not even bear fruits with regards to checking whether they meet prosecution threshold. I don't know what you think about this. If you're a South African, are you in support of Julius Malema or are you in support of the DA? But then we remember that there is the government of the day, which is led through the party of ANC. This is the Independence Party. I can tell you that the manner in which people hold on independence parties, it is very difficult to beat it down. But ultimately, at some point, independence parties are always defeated. If you look at, for instance, in Uganda, the NRM party is the party that led the revolution that toppled the Idi Amin government. Now, if you look at the manner in which people have supported the NRM party and President Museveni, you would ask yourself where they get that energy to support a party for that many long years. So, even in South Africa, I believe the ANC party still has serious support in the ground, and therefore, for anybody to really beat it out of its game, they must take necessary steps and they must really unsettle the establishment and the status quo. I don't know what is your opinion about this, but let's get communicating down in the comment section and tell me whether you believe the comments by John Steenhuisen were really informed by the hate or the rivalry they have between these two parties, or it is just something that is informed by the manner in which Julius Malema has been speaking about land rights and reclaiming these rights back to the South Africans. Please, if you're watching us for the first time, don't forget to hit the subscription button, like this video and share. Let's meet in our next video. Goodbye.